All right, hello everybody, and welcome back to my conversion to video of Dr. Dave Regis's free ebook, opening repertoire for new players. And as I always say, crusty old veterans could learn a few things from it too. And what we're doing is looking at miniature games in the recommended lines from Dr. Dave. Now, if you've been watching the rest of the playlist, you know we've already looked at various things. We've looked at this one for white, so the Scotch game and the Scotch gambit. We've looked at this one, so the Petrov defense. We've looked at a very early d4, so Scotch game. We've looked at the elephant gambit, which is ugh. We've looked at the Latvian gambit, which theoretically is ugh, but people who've been watching will know that I used to play it as a kid and I've got a bit of a soft spot for it, but yeah, it's not great. And we've even looked at Philidor's defense. So now we've covered pretty much everything black can do in this position that's sensible. And so we need to look at alternatives to e5. So instead of playing e5, what else can black do? And there's loads of different things. And the next three videos, we're going to look at something called the Scandinavian Defense, sometimes known, especially in the older chess books, as the center counter. And that's d5. And I'll just leave the computer on for a sec because you can see there's not really much choice here for white. You could, if you wanted to throw black out of their preparation, actually play e5. And then black kind of has options that he might play c5, and it's not so easy to play d4 really quickly. If black goes e6, you're probably just going to play d4 and you've suddenly got it into the advanced French defense. Okay, fine. So you could think about doing that if you're white, quite possibly, but I'm not saying it's the best move. What we're not really going to do as white is play passive stuff like this. We're probably not going to want to play here because it's just not pretty after d4, knight e2. It doesn't look nice at all. I wonder if you can even play d3. No, it's just saying e5 and c5. And it's not nice for white. So realistically, you've either got this move or you've got pawn takes pawn. And all of the games in all three parts here are going to look at what happens if black recaptures the pawn straight away. Now, that's all fine, but you will just be aware, and this is why I'm getting this out of the way, just be aware that black will sometimes play knight f6 and possibly even c6. There are some gambits that can be played here. So if you want to avoid all the gambit stuff, you just need to be prepared to play here. And black's okay. There's nothing wrong with this at all for black. It's fine. But if you go this way here, and I would suggest, I play the Scandinavian as black quite a bit. I would suggest do not try to hold this pawn. Do not play c4. It's too risky. It's too sharp. And you'll probably run into someone who's played it loads and will know what they're doing. Just occupy the center. Let black have their pawn back. They will probably, or sometimes you'll get the two gambits. You might get the two gambit possibilities. If they just take back, you're pretty happy with this as white because you've got a nice big center, plenty of space. It's okay. So I needed to just get that in because, as I say, you may find that not everyone plays queen takes pawn here. There are options, but we're going to see queen takes pawn in all of these videos. And against this, it seems Dr. Dave is not surprisingly recommending knight c3. It's pretty obvious, pretty natural. Develop a piece and attack the queen. So we're going to say knight c3 is Dr. Dave's recommendation. And then after this, black has three main moves. Most of the games we're going to see in these parts are queen to a5, which I play. There's queen to d6, which I don't. But I do have a book on the Scandinavian, and maybe one day I'll start playing it if I can ever get around to reading that chapter. And then we have queen d8, which just looks weird. It is the one that I tend to play most. And it's so solid. It's just super solid. Perfectly playable for black. You can see slight advantage to white. You'd expect that from most openings. So, okay, like most of the things in this book, it is playable for both sides. But we're going to see some games where things go catastrophically wrong quickly. So that said, let's get the analysis board onto a fresh one and we'll see our first game. So e4, d5, let's turn the lines off. Only use those when we need it. Takes, and knight to c3. And the queen has to go somewhere in this particular, excuse me, sorry, I've done the moves in the wrong order because I'm a donut. D4 comes before knight to c3. Every other game, knight to c3 is played. And knight to c6. In this position, it's okay to do this, but generally, if you're going to play the Scandinavian as black, don't put the knight in front of the c-pawn, because the c-pawn needs to be one of your possible breaks. But anyway, in this game, because it just isn't going to matter because the knight hasn't come here. Knight to f3, so we've defended our pawn because there were two pieces attacking it. We've got bishop to g4 and bishop e2, and white's setting a trap here. It looks like black can win a pawn, and black clearly thinks so, because takes here. But now the trap is sprung. There's a tactic here, very, very strong tactic for black. If you want to press pause and find it, please do. But I'm going to carry on in 3, 2, 1. And the move here is bishop takes knight check. The reason being the knight is the only piece attacking, defending the queen. So bishop takes is check, pawn takes. And now, of course, this is undefended. So white has just won a queen, a whole queen, and game over. Okay, let's look at the first game where we've got named players. So we've got Kornev and Solofiov, the Suetin Memorial. So, Alexei Suetin, I know that name. He was a grandmaster, and it says there's a memorial tournament for him back in 2002. So let's have a little look at this game. E4, D5, E takes D5, Queen takes D5, and we have knight to C3. And in this game, black plays my personal favorite, Queen to D8, the super solid Queen to D8, D4, and E6. Now, I don't like this. It's not being condemned by the computer, but I don't like it because it's blocked in this bishop. This bishop needs to be here, or occasionally here if the knight's already developed. So this is just a horrible move. I'm sorry, it just is. I know the computer's not disliking it, but I don't want to block this bishop in. So I'm saying if you're black, you really ought to put the bishop out here, or possibly play c6, and then if knight f3, put the bishop here. But either way, I don't like e6. Okay, that's getting off topic. Knight f3, white develops normally, and now black plays h6, which just looks a bit time-wasty, but again, the computer's not absolutely hating it. Bishop to d3. I mean, white's developed 3 pieces and has the bigger center. Black's developed precisely nobody. So you can see, I think, probably why I'm a little bit unhappy with what black's up to, and slight advantage white. Bishop b4. Black's finally developed a piece and has pinned this knight. White doesn't particularly care about losing bishop for knight. And indeed, black does so. Goes for the exchange. And bishop to d7. So I guess black's plan is to put the bishop here and get it onto this diagonal. Okay, well, interesting. Rook to e1. Now, people who've watched the other videos will know how many of Dr. Dave's games revolve, or these example games he's found, revolve around one side or the other, usually black, not getting their king castled. And suddenly the alarm bell should be sounding. Knight to f6. Oh dear, bishop a3. That's nasty because it guards this square. So now the black king can't castle. So maybe on the previous move, black should have played the knight to here to block the diagonal and be able to castle. Maybe, that's a speculation. But anyway, bishop to c6, as we suggested, that was the plan. But it's not very good because yikes, +5, near enough. Rook to b1. And now black just makes a horrid, horrid blunder. The most natural move you could imagine in this position, develop your knight and watch the bar straight up to there. Why? Well, basically the game is now lost. So if you want to try and find white's winning move here, please press pause. But otherwise I'm going to carry on in 3, 2, 1. And here's why. Rook takes his check. Now, this is a problem because the bishop is guarding these 2 squares. So you have really only 2 choices. You can either put the queen in the way, but after rook takes queen, you know, you've lost your queen and you can't take the rook. Yeah. The alternative is pawn takes rook. Okay. But now we get checkmated because the bishop attacks on this diagonal. This bishop is guarding the squares here. and black can't put anything in the way, and that's checkmate and ouch. So yeah, black can get into some trouble if they muck around and time waste. Okay, let's get the next analysis board going. And so we are in 1997 here. Daniliuk against Belotsekovsky, the Russian championship, no less, although I don't recognize the player names, but let's see how this miniature game ended. So e4, d5, takes and takes, knight to c3, and in this game, black plays queen to a5, which is okay, fine. d4 from white, perfectly reasonable. Knight f6 from black, okay, fine. I still quite like doing this and then putting the bishop out, but okay, fine. Nothing, you can't knock developing a knight, I suppose. Knight to f3, but I am going to knock the next move. Here we go again. Please, folks, if you're going to play the Scandinavian as black, just don't block this pawn with the knight. Just please don't. Yeah. Here's me criticizing master level players, but just don't do it. This pawn needs to be able to move. Anyway, bishop to b5, bishop to d7. I mean, it's not awful, don't get me wrong, but +1 and a bit. You don't want to be +1 and a bit, not when you don't have to be. Bishop to d2. Now, this is a common theme. In this queen a5 variation, white will frequently put the bishop here. And so it's lined up to the queen. And then if this knight moves anywhere, you've got to deal with the attack on your queen. And that's one of the reasons I tend to go straight back to d8 anyway, whatever. So here, black castles. Okay, well, fine. a4 from white. Excuse me. Not unreasonably. I mean, the king's this side, so obviously you're going to start attacking. And then e6 from black. It's creeping up. It's not looking good. +3.5, +3. White plays knight e5, which is a typical move for white and Scandinavian, by the way, a typical attacking idea. And black just decides to put the bishop in the way, put the bishop here to block this one from the queen. And then off goes the bar. Oh, dear. So there's a problem. And the problem is, and again, this is part of the reason why you really can't have this pawn here in the Scandinavian. Where's the queen going? I mean, if you think about it, she can only go to 4 squares. She can't take the pawn. She can't take the bishop because they're obviously protecting each other. She can't go here because of the bishop. And she can go here. So that kind of tells you what white's next move is going to be. And it's just this. And the queen's trapped. Yeah. Ouch. In the actual game, black played a move for the sake of playing a move, but after knight takes, bishop takes, black actually just resigned because you're a piece for a queen down and a decent level of chess. That's curtains. Okay, let's go for our last game for this video, because I say I'm going to split this into 3. And this is Boersma against Kruder, the Netherlands Championship semi-final from 1990. Okay, well, let's see where we go here. So e4, d5, e takes, queen takes, and Dr. Dave's recommended knight c3, and black plays the queen a5 line, which, by the way, is perfectly okay as long as you follow it up properly. Now, in this case, bishop c4, which is fine, knight to f6, okay, and d3, and this is quite interesting. It's surprising. I play this as black, how often the player of the white pieces puts the pawn on d3 instead of d4. I make no comment on whether it's any better or not. It's just interesting that how often white doesn't occupy the center. But anyway, and maybe this is why, by the way, because if bishop f5 is coming, then these 2 pawns actually then blunt the bishop. So maybe that's why so many white players play d3. I don't know. I haven't asked them. Anyway, bishop d2. So we've got this nasty nonsense coming again. And if black's not careful, they'll get into trouble. So c6 is sensible. You give the queen an escape route back to home. And queen e2 from white. And unfortunately, black now falls for the trick. You really need to put the queen back here because you just can't allow these kinds of discovered attacks. I'm going to suggest queen c7 is probably okay. Yeah, the bar's hardly moved. So queen c7 is what black should play, but what they actually played was here. And off goes the bar up to the top of the screen. So once again, I'll leave this for you to try and solve if you want. What's the correct next move for white? press pause if you'd like to try to find it. Otherwise, we're going to carry on in 3, 2, 1. And the correct move is, not surprisingly, a knight move to uncover the attack on the queen. And what are you going to do? Here's the features of the position. We've got the pawn attacking the bishop lined up to the queen, and the white queen lined up to the king. So where's the queen going to go? Well, if she goes here, because this is just funny, this is checkmate. Because pawn takes knight is illegal because the queen takes king. So yeah, that's not very good. If she goes here, she's not going to go to c7 because knight takes queen. Let's not be silly. If she goes here, this is still a great move because pawn takes knight is still illegal because it's still pinned. So the king has to move, and now we just go knight check, king moves somewhere, whatever, and then knight takes rook, and white's just won an entire rook and a pawn. And just for the sake of completeness, so knight to b5. If the queen does anything else, for example, goes here, there's a myriad of ways for white to win. You can still do the same idea as before with knight here. If you really want to keep it simple, just go there, check, and win that rook instead. Anyway, ouch. The point is, ouch. I'm just going to put the computer on in this position. Yeah, my suggestion as a Scandi player that queen c7 needs to happen pretty urgently. It seems to be the top move. I'm surprised it's considering e6 as well, actually. I'm actually surprised. I would have thought queen c7 and queen d8, but okay, the computer says e6. But what you can't do is this, which just runs into far too many horrible, horrible tactics. Ouchie. Okay, so that's part 1 of our look at the Scandinavian defense done. And I will be back shortly with another 5 games for you. Thanks for watching. See you soon.